Hey guys, David Robinson here. Another great episode for you today. I've got a guest that I've been looking forward to having on the show for quite some time now. I've got Matt Faircloth with me. Matt, welcome to the show. Appreciate you coming on.
David, it is an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
For those of you that are in the multifamily investing circles, Matt is a name that is very common. He's done a great job of providing a lot of content and information to those that are looking to get into the space. He's done a great job from a marketing perspective and building his brand. And so I'm really excited to just dive into his world of real estate investing, how he's built his business, and hopefully glean some insights and some strategies and tactics that could be helpful to you all in building your own business. But before we do that, Matt, our podcast is all about the journey. And so we would love for you to back up and talk to us a little bit about your backstory, the background, and then how you got into the multifamily space, specifically the commercial multifamily space.
Sure. Absolutely, no problem. And a good question. We were actually involved in a lot of this in small stuff like single family homes. My first investments were, singles, duplexes, bought a couple of quadplexes and that kind of stuff, which you could call a quadplex an apartment building technically, but it's still on the smaller side. And we had made a name for ourselves around Trenton, New Jersey, buying smallish properties, mixed use buildings, those kinds of things in our early career, and we just wanted to scale larger, wanted to go into bigger deals, and so we slowly reached up the ladder into. I think my first like double digit was a 10 unit. Then we went from there to an 18. And then kind of took on the mantra of like, doubling your portfolio every time you do a deal, which I've told that to other people, like, hey, why don't you it's like super slow to do that at first at like 2 units, but that bell curve scales up really fast, now or exponentially, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And everything. Yeah. So we went to 18 and then scaled up from there. And another thing I should say is that we scaled into new markets because we started in Trenton, New Jersey, and Trenton's a really funky market, like a lot of small tertiary cities. That there's not big multi in Trenton. There is in the outskirts, but a lot of that is corporate owned. It's Jersey, right? So a lot of it's corporate owned or family generationally owned. It just doesn't trade very often. And so we expanded out of Trenton and got into Pennsylvania. And that opened us up into a new world of properties that do trade more frequently or economies that are expanding. So there's new housing coming in, new demand for housing, more people, rising rents, rising tide kind of thing. And we took the landlording lessons we learned in Trenton, which were a ton, and applied them to other markets across the U.S.
Well, love that. And thanks for giving me a little bit of background. I love that you started in
Yeah.
the small multifamily space because a lot of our listeners are
Hmm.
in that space currently or have played in that space in the past and are looking to scale up.
Hmm.
And so, if you can, talk to us a little bit about your business today. We've talked about the background. Let's talk about what your business looks like today and what you focus on. And then I'd love to sort of bridge the gap between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. So today, we control just under 2,000 units. We're in North Carolina and Kentucky. We'll cross way over 2,000. Probably by the middle of this year or that, just given what our pipeline looks like and everything. And we're only in the Piedmont Triad of North Carolina. We are in Lexington, Kentucky, and we are in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Those are our three markets. I still have like a
All right.
few assets in Trenton, but it's single digit assets at this point. So that's our portfolio. We believe in market focus, and we believe in Uber market focus, like niche down. So
Mm.
and we've
And from
been.
from an asset type perspective, strictly multifamily.
Yes. I got a few. There's a couple buildings. I think it's just one in Kentucky we had that just so happens to have a couple of commercial storefronts. But we don't pursue that. So that was just like a outlier kind of thing. But yeah, primarily multifamily.
And
I,
then
I own one office building that's a remnant that I have in Trenton, a couple of mixed use buildings in that, but far and away, 99% of our portfolio is multifamily.
okay, and then as far as asset class, you focus on C, B class stuff, A class stuff. What do you do?
No, I'm the other end of the spectrum, man. I'm not the bougie A class, brand new construction guy. I'm the C class workforce housing. If it was built before 1980, I'm likely interested, kind of thing. Because there's less people that are interested in that. I've met people that have terms that just will not buy anything built before 1980. I will, and there's a certain tenant class that needs housing like that. And those properties are not going to just fall into the ground. They're well built. And that so we tend to buy well built properties that are older that need a big facelift. I
Mm.
buy ugly ducklings, properties that need to get torn apart and put back together again. A lot of properties like that at that age tend to have crime issues and that kind of stuff. We take those and we know how to clean that kind of stuff up, make the properties really great, not mediocre. We know how to make them great, and shine well for people that are, middle income to lower end of the middle income earner space. People that earn around the middle, people that earn at the median or maybe one standard deviation above the median of the area that they're in. That's it.
Got it. Yeah,
Yeah.
love it. Well, I want to dive into a little bit about the heavy lift stuff and sort of the mentality around investing in that product
Yeah.
type and
Yeah.
attracting investors to that product type. So I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a discussion around that, but I want to table that for a moment
Sure.
and sort of bridge the gap between this space of doing and building your own portfolio of small multi and then making a transition into large commercial and bringing other investors to the table, right?
Mm-hmm.
This concept of syndication. When did that happen for you in your business life cycle? And what was that like? What was that transition like from being an investor on your own to then
Yeah.
doing larger deals and bringing people along with you?
David, I wish I could say that it was one of those things where it's like, oh, by March 22nd, 2011, I will have this many investors or whatever. We just kind of, stumbled into it, man. And as a lot of things that we've done in life, but it just tend to work out. I mean, we stumbled into some things that didn't work and we stumbled into some things that did work. We say, hey, let's do that again, And so our first investor that wasn't like, immediate family, because we got started with immediate family helping us out, and some of our money too, but immediate family putting some wind in our sails. But the first investor I wasn't related to was somebody my wife went to grad school with.
Mm.
And she was doing like got reconnected to him on LinkedIn and did a conference call with him. And this got to talking shop. What are you up to? I'm up to this. So I graduated from, from grad school, and now I'm a stockbroker in New York City. How great is that? My wife was at the time running marketing human resources product, and my husband is involved in real estate. And her colleague from college said, or from grad school said, real estate, that's so interesting. I wish I could be involved in real estate too, but I just don't have the time. Right.
Mm.
And this guy's putting in 80 hours a week, tackling the bear of building a Wall Street investment portfolio for his clients. Right. So he does the time, but he's a smart guy, Wall Street guy, gets that Wall Street's not the only animal out there. And that, so he wanted to get involved in something else. And real estate is obviously something that he knew that a lot of wealthy people hold their wealth in sticks and bricks. And so he and I went up and had coffee. And before you know it, he was just like, so tell me what you're doing. And I described my assets and stuff that I've done. And he goes, well, if I give you 50 grand, what could you do with it? And I was like, well, you could do a lot of things with it. This was 2011, like
Mm.
as America was just like kind of waking up out of the financial shakedown, and there's a lot of foreclosures out there. And I said, man, with 50K, we probably could buy a couple of rentals around Trenton. I could fix them up and we could lease them out. And he said, okay, you go find a deal. And I ran right home and found my when I called on my wholesaler friends, like, I need a deal. I need a deal. And before you know it, after a few phone calls, a deal shows up. So my first syndication, David, was two little single family homes, two little townhouses that me and my new best friend from New York bought for 25K a piece, and fixed them up on a private. He put the equity in. I negotiated a private loan from another
Mm.
friend of mine that lent us the fix up money. And then we did the Burr strategy, bigger pocket style, and we built them up and refinanced them. And that was our first equity deal, not a 100, 200 unit apartment building or anything like that. Just a little small onesie twosie thing. But then this New York guy goes and tells his buddies that him and this dude he met in Trenton are now buying up Trenton. And before you know it, I got a line of New York guys around the corner that are taking the train down from Trenton. And I'm like the Trenton tour guide now, picking these guys up at the Trenton train station, taking them around Trenton, showing them the neighborhoods and everything like
Oh,
that.
that's great.
Yeah, and they're all coming in with, like 50K here, 75K there. And before you know it, we were able to take down a bunch of projects in Trenton, and we scaled up. And before you know it, we're taking down a 4 unit and a 5 unit. And is with that small group of investors, we took down that 10 unit that I mentioned earlier. That was with a group of investors. Um, and then we just scaled and scaled. And then eventually these guys are like, you know, Trenton, love it, but aren't there other parts of the world that we're open to go to and everything like that? And so that's when we reached over to across the river to Philadelphia and
Mm,
did our thing there. So
love it.
and then we're off to the
Love it.
races from there.
Well, and and that's just getting started. That I love hearing the story about how you sort of organically built this thing. There wasn't
Yeah.
sort of this big, vision of, hey, we're going to go and acquire 2,000 units. It was like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to do the deal that's in front of us and knock that out of the park and do a great job and
Yeah.
garner more and more trust from the people that we are working with, and then take the next step. I love that.
David, I got to tell you, like that whole concept of just doing what is in front of you to do, it is, I think it's a key to success. Is that, like, listen, man, you want to own a couple thousand units, I get that. And and I get, we all want to think big and swing for the fences. We all want to be Grant Cardone. I get that, right? But at the end of the day, you do have to put what's in front of you to do, and that might mean cleaning up some things in your current business, or that might mean advancing and doing the smaller deals, just scaling up and reaching one rung up on the ladder. And before you know it, you're way up the ladder than you would have been if you were just trying to bid with the big boys or big girls and do 150, 200 unit buildings when you only have like a 10 unit portfolio. It's maybe maybe 8 rungs up is not what you should be doing. Maybe just reaching for just a rung ahead of you is the way to scale.
Yeah, love it. So I want to transition just slightly and talk about building a brand.
Mm.
I feel like you guys have done a fantastic job of building your own personal brands, as well as your business brands, and having and creating some strategic partnerships that help you with that.
Mm.
What insights could you share with our listeners who are wanting to build a brand to attract capital and opportunities to their brand?
That's great. Another yet another question I'm not asked. I get to talk about enough, because I believe that brand is so important. It really is, and a brand's way more than like a logo and a cool name.
Right.
A brand's like what you stand for, your core values. It's everything that's underneath that umbrella. In that, so I think it's a matter, if you're really willing to dig deep and talk about, like, let's go deep for a second, David. Like, what's the impact you want your company to make on the world? My brand is to transform lives through real estate. That's what DeRosa Group is here to do, is to transform people's lives through real estate. And that's our tenants, staff that work for us or work on our properties, and our investors, all three, to make their lives better through what we do. And that's what we stand for. And yeah, we have a cool name as well, and a website, and everything like that. But if you look at what's behind a lot of our messaging, behind a lot of our YouTube channel, Instagram, all that stuff, transforming lives through real estate is just in the background. It's
Mm.
you kind of see it through everything that we talk about. And that, so that's really what the brand is. And then those that want to really scale and make a big splash, if you want to dabble, maybe you don't need a brand, fine. But if you want to make a big impact in real estate and be known and do a lot more than make money, just make some money. If you want to do the next level from that, then the brand is essential. Like, what do you stand for? What is your company here to do? And how can I convey that through, brief messaging, and what's my repeated story I say to my market all the time. So I'm a huge fan of Gary Vaynerchuk, and I learned a
Mm.
lot about brand and messaging from him. So
Love that.
yeah, thank you.
Well, let's even take it a step deeper.
Please.
On a very granular level. I mean, today,
Yep.
what do you guys focus on to support or build your brand as far as a marketing from a marketing perspective? What are you guys
Mm.
focused on right now? What's important to you in your business to continue to foster the story that you're telling about your business?
Well, a lot of YouTube. And so
Mm,
I do a lot, as you know, maybe probably find out about us through YouTube or whatever, because we've been doing it for so long. Um, and so I put a lot out there about, and then one of the core foundations of DeRosa Group is also transparency. And that's transparency with our investors, transparency with those that want to learn about real estate in general. And so that's why YouTube works so well for our brand. And so we have a model on our YouTube channel called A Day in the Life,
mm,
where we just go out in the field and go hang out, watch our apartment buildings or whatever. And I just bring my cell phone out. Hey man, that's what I'm doing, is this, is that, and if, people of the staff are willing to go on camera, hey, and so, how was that apartment? Or, oh, it's great or whatever. So we just bring in what it's like to run and own and buy a multifamily, right? Because
mm,
a lot of people talk about how cool it is and hip it is to own and buy multifamily, but no, not many people out there are talking about what it's really like after
mm,
closing, when really the rubber hits the road. What is it like? And so we try and capture a lot of that. That's how we like put our brand out there. Um, we don't just pound our chest on Instagram. We try and put real educational things that are just conveying a bit of our messaging out there. So I also, to bottom line it with you, David, and maybe really answer your question this time, is I rarely brag it without
mm,
like putting some snippet of the brand in there. I'm not going to talk about how we just bought an apartment building. We just closed. You see enough of that on social.
mm,
I will do that, but immediately I will thank my staff, my investors. Can't wait to make a difference for these tenants, and we're really going to roll up our sleeves and make this property amazing. And so, if I'm putting out a celebration post, you can be certain that something about transforming lives through real estate is in that post as well.
mm. Yeah, love that. From a tactical perspective
Mm-hmm.
in creating that type of content, maybe for the individual that doesn't necessarily have the budget to hire a full team to help with that. You mentioned, hey, I'm just grabbing my cell phone, I'm bringing it out there. This is the real life, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is a two-part question. The first is, I think most people get hung up on the challenge, this transparency challenge of not feeling comfortable really putting it all out there. Did you ever deal with that? And if
Mm-hmm.
so, how
Oh
did
yeah.
you overcome that?
Regularly, because there's an ego inside all of us,
Mm,
right? And we all still in our core want to look good. And so there's been many moments in me that I've not wanted to put things out there, but by the encouragement of my wife, or by me remembering why I'm really doing this is not to look good. I'm doing this to help people, and to build my brand and build my company, right? So it's okay to get a little vulnerable sometimes. Like when I was writing Raising Private Capital, we were closing a deal that involved the 1031 exchange. And it turns out that the 1031 exchange custodian that we had picked turned out to be running a Ponzi scheme. And
mm,
so he absconded with mine and a bunch of other people's money, other people that had 1031 through his company. It just so happened that his carousel stopped right in the middle of my deal.
wow.
Lucky me, right? And so Liz, my wife, was like, "You have to talk about this in the book." And so
Mm,
I did. So I put it's that whole, it's the last chapter of the book, goes into this a bit of what had happened and what went down, and what we chose to do around it, and also how hard this business can be sometimes, right? So it was therapeutic in some ways to talk about
mm.
it, and people, like, I think
Was there
people.
was there ever any concern? And granted, the book, and forgive me for cutting you off there, but
Go.
I wanted to dig a little bit deeper
I
on that
talk too
piece.
much. You're more than
No, that
welcome
was
to talk.
great.
Cut me off.
The book was written, and then but at the time, in that moment when you were
Yeah.
going through that, was that something that you felt comfortable discussing with others, or is that something that maybe you would hold back, wait until it resolves itself, and then release other? I'm just asking from a tactical and a strategic standpoint.
Yeah.
Is that something that you would hold back, deal with, resolve, and then publish down the road?
It'd have been a lot more courage. It'd have been a lot easier to do it that way, but it took a lot more courage to talk about it in the middle of it. I mean,
Mm,
honestly, when I wrote that in the book, like the my jaw still hurt from the uppercut that I had gotten from this guy that stole our money,
So
right?
it was still fresh.
Oh yeah, it's still
Mm,
blood gushing from the wound, right?
got
It's,
it.
it's certainly still fresh. But the reason why I told it is about that you do whatever it takes and you put investors first. So a little more detail. We
Mm,
had $716,000 stolen from us in this. It's funny, I know to the penny, right? That's $716,000 stolen from us in that 1031 exchange debacle. And what we ended up doing was we ended up giving those investors a piece of our equity to cover their shares that they
mm,
would have gotten to buy had the 1031 actually gone through, right? Um, and so that felt clean. It felt cathartic to be able to cover them, but it also, like, because I did the right thing during this, and maybe that's to underscore that or to say it again, because during this mess and because during this like mess that I was having here, because I chose to do the right thing by my investors, it wasn't embarrassing to talk about. If I like, oh yeah, man, I didn't have a business plan on this apartment building and we almost lost it, and it's in receivership now and we're about to lose it. But I didn't do the right thing and just didn't do anything to really try and remedy the situation. It would probably have been harder. But we've talked about our failures and talked about the bad things that have happened because we just did the right thing and covered our investors or did the right thing and took another bite at the apple or tried again or threw some of our own money into the deal to make it work. And so I'm willing to talk about it, just about anything in the business that's gone wrong because we've done the right thing in the middle of it and
mm.
we've righted the course.
Yeah. Love that. Well, and I think, being willing to share the win, on the podcast world, in the podcast world, we often only talk about all the big wins, right? Everybody loves to talk about the big
Too
wins,
often,
but
man. But
we
it's
learn way
tiring.
more from
Yeah.
the challenges and the
Yeah.
frustrations. But it's hard to get people to talk about that stuff. So,
Nobody wants to get real, man. I mean, except for yours truly, right? But at the end of the day, it's hard to get people to really, really take their mask off and get real. Because you're right, everybody wants to just pound their chest and talk about pound their chest, talk about how many doors they have, talk about how amazing their business is, talk about how happy their investors are, talk about the IRR they made their investors on that deal or on that sale or on this purchase or whatever it is. I joke that that according to Instagram, real estate investors go to conferences and masterminds, they close deals, and they go on vacation. That's it. You know, that's what people talk about. You know, and it was funny because I went to Best Ever a couple of weeks ago, and I'd closed the deal the day before, and I was joking to myself, and I didn't post this. I should have, but I did two of the three in a 24-hour period. But I just never got around to putting that out there. I'd rather just put out educational stuff or whatever. But like,
yeah.
I think it just takes a little more courage to be vulnerable and to understand we're all human, and it's actually of more value to people. And people see, bottom line, above all else, David, people see through it. They know it's not
Hmm.
all sunshine and roses. So why are you going to pretend that it is?
Yeah.
They know you're full of it. You
Yeah.
know,
Love that.
yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about team building. You have a built-in team, a partner
Mhm.
with your wife.
Yeah.
But outside of that, you guys have done a great job of building a team and surrounding yourself with great people, and
Mhm.
also strategic partnerships that have helped you to grow your brand. Maybe share some insights that you might have with our listeners about
Sure.
building a team and strategic partnerships.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Liz was my partner for many, many years, and now this experiment she launched many years ago called the Real Estate Invest Her has taken off to the point where when I go to networking events, I'm now Liz's husband. It's like where's Liz? Like she's not here. I went to Best Ever, and I didn't do this, but I was going to turn my badge around and just write Liz is not here. You know, in that because her brand has become phenomenal. Talking about that brand that she runs. But at the end of the day, it's that's become her main consuming effort. And so I've had to replace my wife and just had my wife and a board member for the Durosa Group, but that's really it. So to go back to your question, is that I've had to some people say, oh, you got to duplicate yourself. No, you really don't have to do that. You have to duplicate, like, you put in people that's been successful for me. What's been doing is to put in people that are great at what I'm not.
Mm,
And I just look at my core genius and say, well, okay, if I could just do my core genius, meaning like my God-given talents, if you want to call them that, or the strategic coach calls them core genius. And there are plenty of assessments you can take for your listeners, like let's see, Strengths Finder, Colby, the Predictive Index, DISC. Those are all assessments you can take to determine, what you ought to be doing, right? And then the bottom line is, how can I put or surround myself by people, partners, employees, whatever, or vendors that are here to do what I'm not here to do, they're here to fill in the gaps. Like if I'm a great underwriter, but an awful capital raiser and not that great at being really aggressive in finding deals, maybe I should just focus on underwriting and find people that are phenomenal capital raisers and deal hunters, and asset managers as well. So that's what I find that the truth of it is, David, is to not try and do everything, is to own what I'm great at, and then have the real, courage to dig deeper and say, okay, what am I terrible at?
Mm-hmm.
What should
Mm-hmm.
I not allow myself to do ever? For me, bookkeeping, financial analysis, and that kind of thing is not what I'm good at. I'm good at being capital raising, voice of the company, tenaciously finding deals, that kind of thing. That's I'm great at, but I'm not good at underwriting and I'm not good at asset management. So I outsource both those two things to two partners of mine.
If you were to choose for your specific business,
Yep.
outside of your role, mainly focused on capital raising, being the voice of the company and so forth, what's the most critical, and maybe I'm putting you on the spot here, but what's the most critical piece to your business, the most critical position that someone holds right now to your business?
Asset management.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And
And it's the most unsung hero in multifamily. But yeah, go ahead.
and so, if you will, let me sort of take you down this path. When you were searching for someone to fill that role, how did that come about? Was it organic? Was it very intentional? Was it forced? How did it come about?
It was the stumble again, man. This is like that guy from my wife went to grad school with. It was the stumble, right? There was this guy that I had gotten to know with the local RIA chapter that I was a part of. Actually ran it actually, and he became friendly. He met me through Bigger Pockets, and we became friendly there, and just kind of mentored him. And he wanted to stretch and scale, so he bought himself a 40 unit in Virginia and decided to ask me to mentor him. And so I did. I mentored him through the purchase, gave me a little bit of equity in exchange for mentoring him and stopping him from jumping off a roof during his closing and everything like that.
Right.
And I helped him through the whole thing. Fine. Then fast forward to his employer decides that his services are no longer needed and they're going to downsize, or whatever you want to say. But the guy gets laid off, and after his wife, I was his first phone call.
Mm,
And he said, what should I do? And I said, you should just hang out with me. I'll just listen. I just maybe we'll glean some stuff. Maybe we'll figure something out. So he and I go together to North Carolina to one of my assets down there. And I was trying to do the asset management myself. Yeah, just meaning like browbeating the property manager, working with them on goals and on initiatives and accountability and that kind of stuff. So we get there, and he's drove me there just so I could be on my phone and work on my computer the whole time, just for something to do, to be around the world, a bigger multifamily. So we get there, and I'm like, Justin, his name is Justin Fraser. You may have heard, some folks out there have heard of him or whatever, but he's literally my right hand. Now, and then the reason why is because we stumbled into this moment that we get there. And I'm like, Justin, listen, I need to go meet with this property manager to go over the financials for the last couple of months. I got a contractor that's mad because he thinks we owe money. I got a vendor that's got a whole book of receipts that don't make sense. And I got a dumpster that's overflowing, and my dumpster guy won't come out to go and deal with it, to go and empty it out. Can you just go here? Go. Here's phone numbers. Go meet with them. I go meet with the property manager for an hour. He comes back. He's like, your dumpster guy's going to be out here in 15 minutes. I talked to the guy that he thinks owes you money, that thinks you owe him money. We went over his bills, and you actually don't owe him money. He actually owes you a little bit of a credit. We worked that out. And your vendor with the receipts, I sorted everything out, and I uploaded everything up into Excel, and I'm having a conference call with him next week and working, and we're going to do all that. Is there anything else you need me to work on? This is an hour. And it would take me a week to work those things out. And I probably would have left the dumpster, still would have been overflowing. The guy still would have thought that I owed him money and whatever. So I realized that that this is, he's so much better at project management than I am, and that's what he did at his day job was project
Mm,
management. And asset management is project management with some drive and some impatience. It's
yeah.
impatient project management. Well, let's go, let's go, let's go. And he was willing to bring that, and
Mm,
so that was a stumble into moment. And had the man not gotten laid off and reached out to me, and me decided that I need somebody to help me get to North Carolina so I could get some work done on the way down there, then maybe we wouldn't be where we are now. And now Justin and I
mm,
manage just under 2,000 units, with us running different divisions of our company.
yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
Great story.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I want to be respectful of your time here and want to start winding things down, but got a few
No
final
problem.
questions for you.
Sure.
Um, First question is, what's the biggest challenge that you're facing right now in your business that we could all learn from?
Mm. Um, we brought in my real challenge, and this is real, is that deciding when someone should be a partner versus when you should
Mm,
outsource to an employee. And my company scaled, and we've been really really blessed, David. We scaled fast, not like scary fast, but we're doubling every other year, doubling every 18 months kind of thing in size as a company. And we want to continue that clip. But to get there, we've added a lot of equity partners, and as we have learned, too many equity partners. And so I think that the lesson that I've learned, that's a mistake that will not be repeated, is that not everyone can be a equity owner of the company. It's okay to have employees and give them performance bonuses, give them upside, give them win-wins. There's ways to give people perceived equity, but your staff the employees don't really want equity. They want to have to sign as a sponsor on your loans and whatnot. What they really want is a piece of what they're helping build. That's it.
mm,
That's it. And if you can find a way to give them that, and there are ways to give them that without giving them equity, that's profit share models and that kind of thing. That's all they're really looking for, is a piece of what they're helping you build. And if you can find a way to meet that, then you can probably have very, very happy people around you that aren't necessarily everybody having their hand into the pot of soup, in that. And so that's probably a big lesson in looking back in hindsight.
can I ask a follow-up question on that piece?
Please.
The there's probably some that would argue that your growth could be attributed to being willing to give up equity in order to
Mhm.
get to where you needed to go because maybe you didn't have the cash flow or maybe you didn't have you know the ability to pay a salary to someone
Yes.
in a key role. So
Yes.
what would you say in hindsight? I recognize that's a challenge now, but do you have any insight that you could share with our listeners that maybe in that stage of, man, do I outsource, do I hire, or do I partner?
Yeah,
Any
I think
thoughts?
that the answer to that question is good. It's a good question, and a valid one, and you probably got a good point, right? That maybe wouldn't be where we're at had we not brought in, because it's hard to bring in A+ people if you're not giving them equity, right? And we have it. I'm surrounded by A+ people. Everybody on my team is smarter than me, in that. But I'm just a pretty face, That's it. But it maybe would be harder to attract them, but there's probably a way that the pie could have gotten carved up a little bit differently with regards to profit share and that kind of stuff. And I think that you always should be asking, you shouldn't just rush into partnership. You should look to say, the words you said, what could be outsourced, right? What can be hired in? What can be deferred a bit, and
Mm,
delayed on adding to the team, and that before we have to immediately partner,
mm.
and that. So that's one of those things that, yeah, you begs to ask that question. And we probably gave equity on some things that should have gotten outsourced.
Love it.
Yeah.
Last question I've got for you before we close things out. What's something that you're absolutely crushing in your business right now that we could learn from?
Um, my company's got a lot of really good attention lately, which is, knock on wood, grateful that continues. And I think that I think that expanding into certain markets, has been phenomenal. And the reason my company's got good attention is because I'm not the only mouthpiece anymore. There are other people that work that are partnered with DeRosa Group or that are that are part of DeRosa that are out there advancing our message as well. Which I think that not enough companies do that. A lot of times the top of the chain, the figurehead or whatever is out there that they're the only ones singing the company song. And unless you've heard of that person, you haven't heard of that company. So I've been able to duplicate myself a bit in my team. And secondly, because we've stayed disciplined in our markets and we're not in like 10 markets in the US right now, like some of the syndicators are, or even like, we're in 3 markets, you know, I said our size is impressive that we're only in 3 markets because that we've stayed so disciplined on market focus. That's enabled us to really scale on team and boots on the ground and property management relationships. And our property managers have become like partners because of the amount of doors that we're able to give them under management. And I think that just staying market focused is a huge win of ours. And I'm very proud of that we've been able to stay disciplined and not chased market shiny nickels.
Yeah, love it. Well, look, Matt, I want to be respectful of your time, so we're going to wind things down here. But what's
Sure.
the best way for our listeners to connect with you, learn more about what you have going on?
2 things. Website would be derosagroup.com, DEROSA group.com, derosagroup.com. They can get me there. They can hit me up on Instagram at the Matt Faircloth. And there's a link in my bio there that you can hear all kinds of cool stuff that we're doing, like pick up a copy of my book and join a free private Facebook group that we have. All kinds of cool stuff in the link in my bio at the Matt Faircloth on Instagram.
Awesome. So if you've been hiding under a rock for the last couple of years and you're not familiar with
Oh,
Matt
you.
and his business, go down into the show notes right now, click on one of those links and connect with Matt and his team. Matt, an honor to have you on the show. I appreciate you coming on, and I look forward to staying in touch with you down the road.
I would like that too, David. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great conversation.